Exciting as we head into the final 10 games of the season. Darren Lewis is here, Rachel Corsie is here, and we've got an extra spot that's being occupied by Michael Owen, who's come in as a special guest because we've got so much to look forward to. We're going to look at the title race, we're going to look at the battle for the Champions League places, could be 4, could be 5 of them, and we're going to take a look at the battle to stay in the Premier League. It's all to be decided, and do you know what? The title is Arsenal's to lose, right?
Kels, you're so mean. The thing is, Kels, is that, like I said in the intro...
Better that way, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Like you said in the intro, you know what I mean, it's ours to lose, but the fact is that I'm nervous, I said in the intro, simply because it's great to be in a position where you're going for something. The players need to be, for me, Arsenal players need to be in this environment. If they're doing what they want to do, the progression they're making, where they want to be at the top end, they have to get used to being in this. The fans, it's all right for the fans to be nervous, and the players, but they have to be able to perform once they get there. But that's why, Kels, it is ours to lose, you know, being in the top and everything. But at the same time, it's very, very exciting for our team.
Yeah, 3 teams separated by just 1 point. It's so close. It's never been this close at this stage of the Premier League season. And it's almost as if you can't just see off one of your challengers. There's someone else we're going to ask you guys to make those calls before that game between... I know. Well, you can just bluff it. Just say, I want Arsenal to win it. My heart says Arsenal. There's your answer. Spoiler. But look, before that game between Manchester City and Arsenal, it's really hard to decide because that is going to be crucial in terms of where the title ends up. You don't think so?
I'm going to disagree. There's so many more games still to play. And, yeah, they're playing each other, so someone's going to lose points, of course, both potentially. But I still think 10 games is, you know, there's so many possible ways this can go. And I don't think this one game needs to mean that. I also think the fact it comes after the international break, from a fan's point of view, is a little bit disappointing because I know what it's like as a player. You come back from international break, it's so difficult to quickly, transition back into that team mode. I think it takes away from both teams. I don't think we're going to see the best of either team. You can't possibly, because everyone's been away, you're coming back in it. Yeah, both teams will be right up for it, and you'll be getting stuck in. It'll be a great game. I'm not going to say, though, the outcome of this is not going to define it. I still think there's so much movement. I think it's going to go. I think there's a lot of change still.
I think that it comes down to navigating this stage of it. Like City, going into games of this calibre, know how to deal with this. And this is what I was saying about Arsenal. They have to learn these things because they have to beat City. For me, they have to beat City.
I agree, and I think the big thing for Arsenal is City are near and invincible at home. We go back to November 2022 for the last time they were beaten at home. The numbers are all in Arsenal's favour. Best defence, they've scored the most goals. They've scored the most goals from set pieces. They've scored the most goals in the final 15 minutes of games. So all of the numbers go in their favour and actually make them favourites, would have to say.
But if they don't win, it's
absolutely.
They don't have to beat City.
No.
You know what I mean? If you say that and then they don't beat them, then it's
And that's exactly the point I was about to make. If you look at last season, the teams you slipped up against were West Ham and Southampton, not the big teams. So in that regard, it's a very fair point. I think for us in media and journalism, and it's fantastic because you've got 3 teams, and lots of people said last season, Arsenal can't win the title. They'd kind of dismissed them because they'd have to be ahead of Liverpool and City. But obviously they've proven they can do that. They've impressed in terms of recruitment, and they've learned that particular lesson. They've learned the lesson of organisation. They've learned that you don't have to be pretty and score 4s and 5s if you can keep clean sheets. And I would be very surprised over the next week or so if we don't see lots of pullouts from the big teams from this international break. For the very reason you said, I think these games after the international break are so big, so crucial. Liverpool have to beat Brighton at home. Have to.
You see, there's games now they have to win.
They have to.
That's why I believe, like, obviously, if you can beat City, it gives you so much confidence and momentum. But at the same time, probably the main thing is to not lose to them. But if you can beat them, the confidence and momentum that gives you to go on to beat the other teams, because there's other teams, you know, the Villas, so Man United, even saw what Man United done in the FA Cup, how they can be so... Look how many goals they can score as much as they concede them. The main thing I believe for us now, for our young team, is to go there and believe you can beat them, because you're going to have to beat the rest. Because I believe that City, when they haven't lost at home, they can beat everybody. You feel like they can beat everybody. They step it up.
So predicting that Manchester City are the most likely to win the title, and presumably they're factoring in heavily what happens in that game at the Etihad. But what I was going to say about Arsenal, if Arsenal were to go on and win it, one of the metrics you can look at as well is how they've performed against the teams around them, and they have been the better team against Liverpool and Manchester City, and there's an opportunity to build on that in the game at the Etihad. So there's an argument that they've earned it in that sense.
Yeah, and the thing is that when you look at that, the problem that Arsenal had is, like you said, they can lose to those teams that we saw, like the Southamptons and things like that coming to, with all due respect to Southampton.
But it was the draws, wasn't it? The West Ham, Southampton, and on the back of the Chelsea.
I think that what they've done this season, they've done a very good job of beating those teams very, very convincingly. Now, if you can beat Man City, then that kind of gives you the confidence, I say, to go into these games knowing we can and we should be beating this team. Those are the reasons why you have to go somewhere like City and beat them, because you've shown that you can beat the teams around you. So if you can beat City, then it's definitely in your hands, because you know that you beat everyone else, you're probably going to keep them away from you.
But that's incredible when you look at that. Given where the teams are in the table, how close they are, is the fact that it's Arsenal have got 2 wins, and they're the only team to beat one of those teams inside the top 3. When you think about where the teams are, that's surprising.
When you look at the teams and the trajectory they're going, it does feel like Arsenal are that team. And if you were to say, what capacity are they operating at, you do feel they've got another 10, 20, 30% still to come in the years ahead. I think it's massively benefited Arsenal. They've probably not been at the very top up until now. I think we saw how heavy a burden that was for the players last year from the get-go, and maybe took its toll in the end. I feel at the moment that Arsenal are the best team to watch. I think they've earned the right to be called the team that looks, to be the one that's performing at the best, and the stats back that up. But equally, Liverpool are a huge club, huge team. Man City, we know they've got that relentlessness. So it's just great.
The only thing I'd add to that is that, have City got more gears? How many times have we seen this team, just the last 10, 15 games, go and win the Champions League, go and win the Premier League, not losing, literally win every game?
But exactly why I say Arsenal have to win every game. They have to beat them, because
are they
City
at full throttle at the moment? Arsenal. That's why I think. Maybe Liverpool and Arsenal are full throttle, whereas
I think so.
City are just.
You can feel like they can go again. Absolutely, they can. And they can not lose any games.
Yeah, but the only thing you could. I mean, again, this is why it's such a fascinating title running, because we thought that a few weeks ago about Manchester City, and then they dropped points against Chelsea. Then you look maybe at the performance against Liverpool, where they didn't seem to be in that end-of-season zone that we normally see them in. So if they are going to kick in, they're leaving it later than maybe they traditionally would.
And plus, remember that they're experienced, not playing as well as we've seen Manchester City play, but they're still getting it done. And they're conceding more goals. I think that's what's happening this season with Man City, is that you can see that you can get at them. Yeah. I think it's 28 goals in 28 games. Something they've conceded, which is so much more. I think it's 2016, 17, the last time they conceded that kind of goal. So you know that they're there, and there's something happening with City where you can get at them. And this is why an Arsenal or a Liverpool or even a Brentford, if you go there and you're organised enough and you can take the chances, you've got a chance at City. And that is where I think Arsenal, or anybody who's playing them at the moment, City, you've got to be ruthless in those moments.
I mean, I'd be interested to see the way that Arsenal approach the game at City, because do they try to nullify Rodri, who is that one constant in all the games that they've won this season? He is the driving force behind it. Or do they try to play their own game and impose themselves on City, given that there are so many players in the Arsenal team who are prepared to take responsibility? They can score goals, they can create goals. How do you approach a game like that?
I think Arteta will be trying to make City worry about them a bit more.
Absolutely.
I think in the past, when you play City, you do probably put more focus on them because you have to. But I think Arsenal at a point now where Arteta maybe thinks, can I make Pep just think about a few things here that we can do that maybe, normally Man City do probably have the luxury of only being able to, of just focusing on what they can do. Yeah. But I think now there's a little more cat and mouse there.
Yeah, and if they can keep it tight, Arsenal, we know how good they've been defensively so far this season. They have that ability from set pieces, although we saw in the goal Manchester City scored against Liverpool, they're not too shabby at that either. Yes. If anything's going to trip Arsenal up, I don't want to play into your superstitions here, but if anything's going to trip Arsenal up, What will it be in the run-in?
Well, it will be, again, if they slip back into... It's a mentality thing now, because they've got the numbers to back themselves up with the defensive record and the goal scoring that they're doing. So it's down to mentality now and you know, getting it done. I think that's the only thing. If they lapse in concentration, like, for instance, like I said, they have to go and beat Man City, I think that would be a major feather in their cap if they can beat Man City, because it would then give them the confidence to go and beat anybody else. And not saying beat them off the park with unbelievable football, but get the job done. And I think that the only thing that can stop them now is if they have a mentality slip, if something like that.
You look at Arsenal this season, and yes, there's been criticism of their celebrations, and they do really embrace the emotion of those big games. I wonder if they've maybe gone in the opposite direction. Rather than try to shut it out, they've done a little bit like what Liverpool did when they were going toe-to-toe with City, and harness that and try and use it as a positive. I don't know what do you think?
I think so as well, because the reason being something that you said righty earlier about the fact that they are chalking off those wins against teams that have slipped up against in the past, the kind of team like Southampton and West Ham that cost them last season. This time around, they're saying, we're beating these guys, and if somebody wants to say anything about us celebrating it, let them. Yeah. But we want to generate a culture of winning within the dressing room that says this is what we do, and this is what we want to embrace and celebrate, and we want our fans to get behind it as well. And when you go to the Emirates now, there is that belief that they can find a way to win in difficult circumstances.
That's what it comes down to, Kels, again. It comes down to the belief, because everybody says that it's Arsenal's lack of experience at this stage of the season when you're trying to win it, what can cost them. And now we're in it. Everybody's fit. You've got a few more people to come back, obviously. Tomiyasu and Timber as well, you know, Thomas Partey, Fabio Vieira, but not so much them two. But Arsenal are nearly at the best team that they can put out there. So, you know, again, it's coming down to now just getting the job done.
If City are going to fall short, and I know they're a point off, but I mean, that is neither here nor there. With 10 games to go, as you say, to the end of the season. If City are going to drop off, what are their weaknesses? What could be the thing that costs them, do you think, come the end of the season? Because I know you're saying you think the best team in the league, but might not win it. So if they don't, what could it be?
Well, for me, sorry, Michael.
Oh, yes.
Go on, Mike. No, come on, Mike.
It's very hard to say. I mean, lots of things could happen. You might say, yeah, they've taken it too late now, because anybody can... We've just seen the graphic there. Arsenal have won 8 games on the spin. Anybody can do that now. So one slip-up... I know we're saying there's lots of points and lots of games to go, but when these teams get focused, you look at the history of the Premier League, look at the last few years, when there's a head-to-head going towards the last 10 games of the season, there's not many slip-ups. There's not many. And, I mean, remember Manchester City, Liverpool a few years ago, they literally won 12 out of 12, both of them to finish. It was insane what was happening. And I just think that these teams are so good at the moment. They're so good. This is... Have we ever seen 3 teams this good in the Premier League at once? I mean, probably not. And I'm not sure they're going to slip up that many times. They might, but I just think that City, they've got form of doing this. They've got form of finishing strong. They've got form of playing in big games, of winning big games at the end of the season. And you have to question it for a team like Arsenal. Not done it before, not in a long time. They have obviously won their last 8, but the pressure's only going to crank up. And there'll be a lot of noise, as Darren says, from outside. So they've got less questions to ask.
You know, the thing is, Kels, we know that Manchester City can win the next 10 games. And that's why I go back to saying it again, why Arsenal have to win. Because if Arsenal...
That would be 18 wins in a row for Arsenal if they win their next 10.
That's a massive, massive ask. But you cannot look at this City side and not say, like Michael rightly says, they can go again. You know, I know they're conceding. But with Arsenal have to win that game simply because they know that City can win all of their games. So if Arsenal lose that game, then City are they're going to be able to win those games. We don't know if Arsenal can do that. Like you rightly said, that would mean 18 games on the spin they're going to have to win. It's something they'll be setting a new precedent for themselves. They know that City can do that. And Arsenal, for me, if I'm in the dressing room, we have to be winning every single game from here on in. You have to. Having set up how close this is going to be and how difficult to call, let's timestamp this. We have 10 games left to play. Manchester City and Arsenal have still to play each other, so that's yet to be decided. That's going to be a big factor. But if you had to call it right now, what would you say? Michael, can't you hear Kelly talking to you? She's looking straight at you.
Well, you're
Mike.
going to... let's take it as read you're going to say Arsenal. Because you want it to be...
You know what it is that I think that Arsenal being top, the goal difference you can see there, and again, I say that's why they have to beat City, because I think they're going to have to win all the games now, and that's how they have to be thinking. They have to win all the games for the rest of the season. It's in their hands. So can Arsenal win all those games to make it 18 on the spin? It's highly unlikely. You have to hope that City drop points to Liverpool, but of course I'm going to go for Arsenal. This is what the fans want. This is what you want to be in this situation and hope that this can happen. So I'm going for Arsenal.
He didn't want to make a prediction a minute ago.
It turned into a rallying cry.
Did I say that all out loud? I thought that was all in my head. Did I say that all out loud? No.
Is that your heart or your head saying that?
You know something? People would say it might be my heart saying it, but the numbers are there, Mike. The defensive, the goals, the set pieces, they're top of the league. If you're not going to believe that your team can do it now, then being a fan of a team that's trying to get into the echelons of the league and the top, it's pointless.
See, I think Michael made a really good point about the best team.
Don't try and waste time. I'm going to get your predictions.
I'm filibustering. The interesting thing about this is that Arsenal don't. If they're going to win, I don't think they need to focus on being the best team aesthetically, in terms of technical brilliance and free-flowing football. They've just got to do the functional things well. Nicolas Jova, who's the most underrated, probably member of staff in the Premier League, is their set-piece coach, and Mikel Arteta goes and sits down and lets him take over at free kicks and corners. But he does the job. He does the job. They've scored the most headed goals in the Premier League as well so far this season. And he is somebody... Sometimes we kind of laugh at clubs that get these guys in to try and find the marginal gains, but he's done that particular job, and I just think they are the small things in what is going to be a race of very, very fine margins that could prove the difference.
So you're saying Arsenal?
Actually.
Are you?
I'm going with Liverpool.
Wow.
Oh, right.
I'll tell you why. I just think they've got the most firepower. They've got Jota to come back, who I think is their best striker. I think, yes, Klopp will regret taking Salah off after an hour, 70 minutes of the game against Manchester United. But I think that's to protect him for the really important stage of the season. Yeah, I mean, listen, I defer to you in terms of being a striker for Liverpool and being available in the business end of the season, because when you won a treble in 2001, you played a big part.
Yeah, I mean, he's really managed Salah back, hasn't he, from a muscle injury, which is it's important, really important to do that. So he's probably resisted that temptation. And I would add that if you fancy Liverpool, I do think that they've got the easiest run in as well.
Yeah, they've got a good...
My heart, of course, says Liverpool. I want Liverpool to win it. I think it'd be the most incredible story, Jurgen Klopp's last season, etc. But I do think that Manchester City are the best team in the world at the moment, and they've proven that. And I can see them just going into overdrive. I think they've got gears left. I think maybe Arsenal and maybe Liverpool are playing absolutely at their peak at the moment, but I think at this time of the season, watch Manchester City go. So my head says Manchester City.
The worry for everybody is that
That's 1-1-1. Here we go, all eyes.
But the deciding vote goes to Rachel.
Yeah. We planned this when you weren't about. Not really. Go on, Rach.
We haven't touched on it. My gut says Arsenal. The one thing we haven't touched on, though, is the impact of Champions League. And I think... I thought about that when I was watching them the other night against Porto, and I thought seeing them progress was that, again, that bit of good feelings, that confidence. Then I do also think... I think being in both competitions is just a huge pressure, a huge weight. Constantly having the games, missing that time in training through the week because you have the midweek fixtures. I think that could play a factor, but I'm going to stick with my gut and say I just feel Arsenal... It could be their year, just have a feeling.
Yeah, me too.
And also, there's plenty of room to change your mind between now and the end of the season. It's just good to get an idea of where we are as we head into these final 10 games.
Injuries. Harrison is much better. Kyle and John out.
How big of a miss will they be for such an important game?
It's what it is.
Football is quite incredible. Everybody in this room will have unbelievable highs, likewise incredible lows at times. I wondered what emotions games like this make you feel at this time of the season, this level of fixture. What emotions come to you?
Good to be here. The season had been really good, winning 2 titles, and after what happened last season, being in contention for the 3 important titles of the season, and now start where is important because we make an incredible work before of that. Last 10 games in the Premier League, now start the important thing against the leaders of the Premier League of this season at home with our people, and I'm pretty sure they will give us what we need to perform our best.
Does this fixture feel like there's more importance to it? Like I say, given the stage of the season, given the difference between the two sides and how tight it really is at the top?
Right now, every game is so important. And if we are able to do it, so next game will be important as well.
Hi Pep, talking about big games and big players, obviously we saw Kevin De Bruyne back on the training pitch this week. Thinking back to last season, he was integral, particularly in these matches against Arsenal away and then at home. Sometimes gets called the nickname Big Game Kev because he raises his game for these huge moments. I just wonder, how integral is he to this kind of moment? And do you notice any changes in him around games like this to have an extra magnitude to them?
Kevin is really so important player. I've been a tough season for him due to injuries and have an asset back. I've been out for a long. He turned really well yesterday, so we will see what they're going to do next days.
When you look at his performances, again, we'll talk about the Arsenal games last season. Is that the benchmark for all young players to kind of follow? Players like Kevin raising their game, playing at that level in those fixtures?
Especially the consistency. So Kevin is playing so consistent for many, many years. This is the most important thing. And the important players, the important games, we need important players, of course. But this is a question of team, for the balance of the team, and everyone has to make a contribution. So we will not put all the responsibility on Kevin or other player. We have to do it all together with our people, of course.
Hi Pep, I want to ask you a question about Arsenal's captain Martin Odegaard. You have talked about him before, that the time he visited you in Bayern, and after that there were some years that it didn't really look like he would get the breakthrough that everyone was waiting for, but now he's the captain for Mikel, obviously, in Arsenal. And what do you think about the development that he's had?
We were not together in Bayern. He made, I think, 1 or 2 training sessions. That is not being together, but...
Still, what do you think about the development he's had since that time?
Incredible well. So, the best season I played, and I think he helped a lot. His pass to Real Sociedad, that they play a lot, confident enough to make this a step alone in Bayern, in Arsenal, and after he became a captain and played regularly, consistent every single day. That's because he become a really important player.
There's also been some criticism for different Arsenal players for not sporting related events, like Martin got criticism for taking pictures with the club camera, Mikel got criticism for celebrating too much the victory against Liverpool. How do you react as a rival manager when you see that your rivals get criticism like this?
I don't react for nonsense things. So if you want to take a picture, take a picture. What is the problem, honestly?
Hi Pep. John Stones has had a couple of injury issues already this season. Were you surprised at all that he was asked to play 2 international friendlies before such a big game against Arsenal?
Any comments about that?
And just in terms of Arsenal, what is the biggest change that you've seen in them from the game that you had at the Etihad at the end of last season to now, do you think?
Same manager, new players, control many aspects of the game, and every time was better and better. So it's normal. When you have a consistent in terms of ideas and managers in the same patterns, at the end always you improve. When you change a lot of managers and players, and after it's more difficult. So I could not expect differently from the beginning of the start of the season.
Hi, Pep. Obviously, you've not lost a game since December in the league. How close to your peak do you think this team is at the moment? Or do you think there are more levels to go?
We played really good the last month, but international break, and always the first game, not now, always the first game at international break, you think, what happened. But yesterday we trained good. We have 2 more training sessions and we prepare the game and ready for it again.
Yeah, there is a chance they haven't trained, but tomorrow we have another session, so there is a chance that they can be available.
It was 8 wins in a row before the international break. Did it come at a bad time, and has it been a challenge to try and almost reignite that momentum?
Well, you cannot do it. That moment is gone. They had to go to the national teams. We have maximized as much as we possibly could the time we had here with certain players, and now everybody's back. Everybody's so positive about what is coming and looking forward to it.
You had 7 Premier League meetings as Arsenal manager against Pep's Manchester City. The first 6 were defeats, but you managed to get that win this season. Could you just put into words what belief that's given you and the belief and mentality it's given your players?
Yeah, we had some clashes as well in the FA Cup, in Community Shields, and it's all great experiences. They have raised the bar in this league, I think, in football in general, to a level that it haven't been seen before, and that's the beauty of a sport, that makes you better, that challenges you more, and you have to keep up with that pace, and that's what we are trying to do.
When you go back to last season, I know people always ask you to compare what's happened this season compared to last season, but does it feel different for you, and does the belief feel different compared to last season?
Yeah, it is different. Momentum was different. We had certain results and some big injuries as well in that moment, and that's it. But those experiences are there to learn. Sometimes you just have to clap the opponent when they are better than you, and that was the case on the day as well, and learn from it and challenge yourself to be better.
We know about your friendship, your mutual respect with Pep Guardiola. How often do you speak now, and has your relationship changed?
Well, it had to change. It has to change. My admiration and what I feel for him, certainly not. In my opinion, he's the best coach in the world by a mile. And he's one of the nicest persons I have met in football, and certainly one of the ones that I have more fun and laugh working with. And that's going to stay there forever. But obviously, our roles at the moment are what they are, and you have to adapt to the situation.
Because I'm guessing there's certain topics you just can't broach anymore.
For sure not, but
you can't talk about football.
It's what it is. But that happens the same in relationship with players. You know, when I have some teammates here, and then you become the coach, and that relationship has to be adapted. You cannot feel different about the person, but professionally you have to act differently.
Mikel, I must ask you about Ben White. He made himself unavailable for England. Just how is he? Received a lot of criticism. What did you make of that criticism he's received? And have you had to speak to him?
I think he has received a lot of love. And you just have to see what his teammates and what everybody in football thinks of him, the one that they've been close. And I think people have respected his decision. And hopefully one day he's prepared to represent his country in the best possible way. But that's completely up to him.
Just finally on that, there's been a few debates about why he actually made himself unavailable. Can you clarify why?
That's a question, and he's the one that has to reply.
Worth a try. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mikel.
Hi.
Nearly a year since you faced Manchester City in April last season. You were in a title race then, but with that distance from that game, what was the biggest lesson you took from it?
The level that we are facing and where we want to be. Certainly that's where we want to be. And you have to make strong steps to get there. And I think we have done some big ones in the last 2-3 years. And we're getting much, much closer. And now it's how you close that gap and actually try to be better than them.
Previously you spoke about the levels that Manchester City have raised football, not only in the league but in the world. They've suffered 5 defeats this season across all competitions, of which 2 have been against Arsenal. So how proud does that make you feel to see that your team has inflicted defeats on one of the teams that you said is the best in the world?
Well, that's great, but that's the competition, and the same with Liverpool. And they have earned the right, you know, for everybody to look at them as an example, because what they've done has been phenomenal to do it in this league and to do it consistently like they have done. And I think that has raised our level as well and our demands to try to be like them and beat them.
You mentioned that the players coming back from the international break have been excited. There's been a positive vibe. for fans and neutrals, it's a very exciting time seeing Arsenal in another title race. Could you just put us in your shoes? What is it like being in this position again, going into these final 9 games, and it's so tight between yourselves, ManCity, and Liverpool?
Yeah, I was just watching everybody walk in the building, and I loved the energy. I loved the smiles. They were glad to be back. They were actually wanted to train yesterday, and the way they communicate and relate with each other is phenomenal. And we have to embrace the moment. We need to go day by day, train really well, prepare for every match, and see where this can take us. We've done a lot already to be in the position that we are, and now we have to embrace and enjoy the moment and go for it.
And just finally, is this the most confident you've felt taking an Arsenal side to the Etihad since becoming the Arsenal manager?
I have full belief and trust in my players and what we are trying to do. But it's something that we have to show on the pitch. Outside is very easy to talk.
I completely forgot while preparing for this chat that there is the Arteta and Pep thing as well, the master and the student element. And I heard you asking a very interesting question, which I'm now claiming and claiming as my own. Who would you rather play for?
Who would I rather play for? The former Man City player. Who would I rather play for?
Because that's not what you said. It wasn't that obvious in the.
I think it's interesting to see the success that Guardiola has had, but then to also see somebody in Arteta who's sort of taken some of those lessons, but he's putting his own sort of like identity to it as well. I think this young Arsenal side, you can see them getting better and better every year, in my opinion. And when we sometimes talk about the future, you're looking at some of the older players around the league, say, whether it's a Salah, it's a Van Dijk, it's a De Bruyne and other players like this, 3-4 years down the road, maybe they're not in the Premier League anymore, but you get the feeling that this Arsenal side will be doing very well with some of their key players now, and I wouldn't be surprised if Arteta was the guy. So maybe the future's theirs, but the now, I'm still leaning Guardiola, I think.
And they're not at the same stage in terms of project either. You can't really compare 3 years in for Arteta and almost 9 for Pep, who has created the best team that Premier League football has ever seen, maybe all of English football history, which is obviously not where Arsenal and this Arteta team are right now. They might become a similar team in 2 years' time, and they might win also a treble or whatever, but we can't really compare the two. It's not really the same in terms of where they are in their pathways, but also in terms of what they've been building through the years at City, when it's a very young project at Arsenal still.
It's also fascinating to have this game right after the international break, because there's usually a concern about injuries. What do we know? Walker, Stones' names have been mentioned, Martinelli, Saka potentially. I know you have your finger on the pulse of breaking news.
Yeah, come on, I mean, the ones about Manchester City and Stones and Walker. Pep Guardiola, before the players left for the international break, and obviously 85% of his players went away with the national team, texted the WhatsApp group and saying, don't come back injured, okay? I don't like... And obviously, unfortunately for him, both Stones and Walker came back with an injury, which he said today they were out. I think Ederson is back now, which is great news, although Ortega is a good goalkeeper. But it's how you readjust your defence without Stones and Walker, really, because both of them really have unique skills in a way, in the sense that Walker, nobody can really match that pace in the rest of the City defenders. And for Stones, Akanji, I guess, is the one that maybe can step into midfield like Stones do, but not as well as Stones. I think Stones is a master of it. So those two players missing, it's not just, okay, let's replace him by him and him by him. It's more, how do you replace the skills that you will bring to a City?
I think those two players being out means they change their style. Because I think we've seen Akanji, for example, go and play into midfield. And I think he's done it well, but he does it differently to a Stones. I think Akanji's more sort of playing behind the ball, where Stones is very comfortable getting ahead of it. And then from that side, if it's going to be somebody playing right back, I think Kyle Walker himself is somebody that revels in duels. It's not to say that he wins every single one of them, but with his pace, his strength and his experience, like taking on potentially Martinelli if he's fit and available, you could see that being a good matchup. You know, it might be nip and tuck either way, but whoever goes out there, whether it's a more inexperienced Rico Lewis who doesn't have the pace or experience of Kyle Walker, or if you maybe put someone like an Akanji out there, who again is not right back, before you know it, the look of the team starts to change. And you need to be defensively good against Arsenal, obviously, because, you know, that's why the goal difference is, I don't know, plus 1 million right now. But,
46.
Exactly, yeah.
Slightly exaggerated,
well,
but yeah,
slight hyperbole, yeah, slight. But they, as I say, I think those are two significant injuries, and I think the fact they've come in a friendly international week, it sort of makes people's case that, like, yeah, you know, friendlies, what's the point in them, unfortunately.
And for
I
Arsenal,
don't agree with that, by the way.
No, but
I don't agree with that.
Bukayo Saka didn't go with England, been rested for the last 2 weeks. He should be okay.
Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Magalhaes. Magalhaes didn't go with Brazil either. There's, I think, a doubt on whether they can participate. I would think that for a game like that, and it's a bit the same for Kevin De Bruyne, who had a bit of a niggle too, it's a case of, unless really they can't run anymore, you make them play.
The funny thing is, I saw someone's comment on the Pep Guardiola saying that Stones and Walker would be out, and someone said, "I'll believe it at the final whistle on Sunday." People seem to think it's mind games. But as you mentioned, Kevin De Bruyne would, he missed out on the FA Cup game because of a bit of a niggle. We're expecting him to game against Arsenal.
Yeah, he does. He's got a very good record against them. But I think the record he has against them are from sort of more indifferent Arsenal sides across the years. But I think looking at this season for City, if they finish the year being successful, you can pinpoint that moment when he did come back in, because all of a sudden they look different. Even though they still have the same quality players around the field elsewhere, they didn't necessarily have somebody that plays those sorts of balls into the box, the ones who can score goals through people's legs, somebody who can play a corner into that part of the 6-yard box, away at Anfield. And if he is available for them, and he can be between now and the end of the season, I think their belief that they can be successful will be there, gives them a great opportunity, but you just don't want to have people missing at this final stage.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so instrumental in everything good they do. He's playing 15 games, he's got 15 assists already. So it's something that they're numbers that nobody else can put up, really. So they're obviously much better with him, even if the discussion to have about Phil Foden and Phil Foden's role when Kevin De Bruyne is in the team, and how do you have them both at their best. But really, De Bruyne is, I think, for them to go and win again a treble or even the league or double, whatever, he has to be fit, and has to fit in that team.
What about from an Arsenal point of view? This game last season, they were annihilated. It was really the game where, they had been leading and up until that point maybe still had belief, but then went there and City really showed. And everything swung then after that. That was kind of the end of it for them.
Do you know what I would say, I think they dropped some points before that, because I think up until maybe 3 or 4 games earlier, they were in a position whereby they could afford to lose to City and still be top of the league.
Yeah.
But when you've seen them drop points at Anfield, which lots of teams do.
Southampton as well.
Exactly, there's Southampton at home. They're losing they drew with West Ham. Like, they'd lost a lot of points to where that game really mattered, but then they arrived without the form that they needed to be able to approach that task. And City, as is the case with most teams up near the top of the league, at home, they can be formidable. And in that moment as well, I think Saliba was out. It was a big miss for them. And I wasn't someone that said because they're holding, they're not going to do anything. But I think the nature of that game, the fact that those City players and the fans and everything was up for it felt like it was almost like not necessarily a title-deciding game, but a very big game.
Yeah.
City arrived in great form with a new sort of look about them. Arsenal arrived and they weren't the best version of themselves. So I think that's why I ended up going that way. But this time,
I completely